Students of Reddit, have you ever lost your temper with a teacher? What's your story? Not me, but a girl flipped shit on my economics professor cause she kept canceling class without sending out emails. The girl only had that class on Fridays and drove an hour to get there. It sucks she got caught in traffic, just to get a note next to the classroom saying, "Cancelled." Ugh, my college did the same thing to part-time students. We make special arrangements to leave work earlier on days that we have classes so that we can get through the rush hour traffic in time, and then when we get there we find out the class has been cancelled. A friend of mine wanted to go to a certain university that was out of state and somewhat tough to get into. The counselor told him not to waste his time as he would never get in. This pissed him off, so he went to the principal, who told him to trust the counselor as that was her job. He applied anyways, got accepted, and taped 2 copies to the counselor and principal's door. He couldn't afford to go anyways, but he was trying to prove a point. Oof, that brought back a bad memory. My mother and father passed when I was in my final year of school. I was off school for a while around the time of the second funeral. When I returned to school, my tutor decided it was her job to tell the class what had happened with me, right there in front of everyone, instead of letting me do it on my own terms. To say I lost my temper would be an understatement. I flipped my shit on a logic professor who lost my assignments records. "You didn't do them. I'm looking at your grades and they are 0s, that's why you have a D." Me, "Look you dipshit, I have papers you've graded right here. They aren't even good, but they are not zeros." It was over the phone, but eventually I read through his comments on my papers while he was trying to argue with me. That's when he's like, "Okay, that doesn't sound made up. Scan your papers and email them in." Went from a D to a B. Holy shit, you actually called him a dipshit? I said, worse tbh. I already had a D, so I was going to have to retake it anyway. My dog died like a day before, and another professor said I couldn't take a final because I was a minute late. I thought I was going to have to drop out. I flipped on several teachers, but this one still bugs me. One of my best friends in high school had died in a car accident, and a couple days later my friends and I told my teacher we would not be able to make it to class because of the viewing. She then proceeded to tell us that we need to plan our days better, and how irresponsible it was of us. I've never felt so much rage. Screw you, Mrs. Weaver. That is an unacceptable response from her. You must really be out of your mind to say something like that. Unacceptable is putting it lightly. You need to plan your days better. Well, excuse me for not planning for an unexpected death of a friend. My I.T teacher wanted to inspect my work, spreadsheets or a Word document or something. Anyway, she accidentally deleted the file. I was upset and tried to point out she just deleted my work. She started to shout at me, telling me I should have saved frequently. I shouted back, telling her that wasn't the issue. She outright deleted the file. It got pretty heated. My parents were called. We were outright yelling at each other for a good couple of minutes, to the point where we were both in tears. I was about 14 at the time. She should have known better. A few years later, my sister had her when she went to that school, and that same teacher berated my sister, calling her names, etc. What a bitch. Edit. It was a long time ago and I was pretty stressed at the time. I can't remember exactly how, but after several attempts, I wasn't able to restore it. Looking back with what I know now, there are things I could have done to restore it now, even going as far as giving myself admin rights and having a poke around. But I was 14 at the time, being taught Aiki by a French teacher. I know a chap who once lost it in a lesson and threw a chair at the teacher. Some years, like 15 or so back, and the two are now good friends. Essentially, a discussion had turned into an argument, holding up the rest of the lesson, with the chap basically being awkward and pedantic, not letting it go, getting unduly steamed up himself, and apparently not realizing that everyone was getting pretty tired. The teacher made some snide remark and the chap flipped, threw a chair and walked out. He waited outside though, cooling off, and afterward the teacher went outside as well, said something to the effect of, "I think we both ought to apologize for what just happened." And so they did, and all was well. A couple of weeks into my senior year of high school, the president gave a speech about the importance of school or something. I don't know. I wasn't really paying attention. Anyway, all of the teachers in my school had to set up their projectors so we could watch it. My math teacher couldn't figure out how to get her projector working. So, me being the nerdy kid, I offered to help. She had a fit. Started screaming about how she wasn't stupid and how I needed to just sit down and shut up. After a few more minutes of her failing to fix it, she pointed at me and ordered me to fix it. I said, "Fix it yourself." She told the whole class to go next door to watch the speech in that teacher's room. When we got up to leave, she pulled me to the side and told me that when the class got back I was going to stand up and apologize for being so rude to her. I refused and went to join the rest of the class. She spent the rest of the year making my life miserable. She told me on several occasions that she was going to make sure that I failed her class. Sure enough, I failed her class. Only class I ever failed. Edit, since people are asking why I didn't report it, I did. My parents went to the administrators, but they didn't want to do anything and said it was an issue for the math department head. The department head was a good friend of my teacher and took her side. There was a high school English teacher, Ms. Blades, who was ignoring me for a while. It's worth mentioning that she didn't really like me for some reason. I wasn't a bad or annoying kid. In fact, I was very non-confrontational and mostly kept to myself in and out of class, so I don't know what that was about. Anyway, I had my hand up because I had to use the bathroom, and she kept pacing about the room, answering other kids' questions, but would glance at me and immediately look away. After about 5 minutes with my hand up and getting ignored, and about to shit my pants, I whistled as loud as I could. Interrupting anyone was completely out of character for me. Well, once upon a time, I had chipped one of my front teeth, so I could whistle extremely loud because of it. My whistle was just that. It was the whistling equivalent of firing a gun in a closed room. Absolutely deafening. The entire room got quiet, and she snapped her head around so fast. As her name might suggest, Ms. Blades was staring daggers into my face. Then one kid goes, "Oh, he just called you a dog." Then she gained serious momentum from that one off and said, "Oh, I don't think so. You think I'm a dog? You think I'm a dog?" I got sent to the principal's office for disrespecting an ignorant teacher. I used the bathroom on the way there. Couldn't you just go to the bathroom without asking? If she interrupted you, you'd have gotten her attention and been able to tell her what you were doing. 100% this. If it's an emergency, always just get up and go. If a teacher calls you out on it, you say, "I tried to ask you, but you ignored me and now it's an emergency and I'm going to the restroom." I had a teacher once who wouldn't let you leave class unless you had a documented medical condition. This class was an hour and a half long, so obviously someone is gonna need to use the restroom eventually. I was always too shy to just get up and go, which resulted in me having an infection from holding it in way too long, since most teachers wouldn't let you go and I didn't have time in between class. Always just go. You're allowed to use the restroom. When I was in 8th grade, my science teacher decided the day before the last test of the year to give us an extra 16 pages of new material to learn by ourselves and appear in the test. Needless to say, everyone lost their shit and started complaining. I wrote her an angry letter. I was later forced either to apologize or they would tell my parents. I apologized because I may have been a little inappropriate, and by the end of the year she was fired after her first year in the school. She also thought it was a good idea to bring her dogs to part of the lessons in the science lab, when there are 2 kids who are allergic to dogs. LMAO, I had a teacher that thought latex allergies were fake. One day we did an experiment with balloons and a kid said she was allergic to latex and the teacher screamed, "No, you ain't!" Then started rubber her violently with the balloon. She got fired that semester. I once flipped on my German teacher. I'm German. She obviously didn't like me and her marks were biased as fuck. This one time she gave me an F on a poetry interpretation. Grading that is ridiculous as you can just interpret it as whatever and the mark depends on the teacher's mood. I always got an A for grammar, because the bitch has to give me credit where my work is quantifiably good. After handing the papers back out to the students, she did some debriefing about the whole thing, comparing what everyone wrote. She told the whole class how good my thoughts on the poem and some of the passages that I wrote were, and wanted me to read out loud what I wrote. I just said, "You gave me an F," stood up and left. Cunt. I had an English teacher like this too. Nobody believed me until she randomly decided to make us do posters. Due the next day. I went above and beyond because I knew she liked crafty shit and figured she couldn't possibly give me a bad grade if I was creative. "Oh, this poster is wonderful. Who made it?" "I did." "Oh." And she literally threw it in the trash. I had a Spanish teacher. And in order to gain other students' sympathy, she would make fun of one of the student, and kind of bully, not that badly but well, that student for this hour of class. Of course, other students would sometimes laugh because class was super boring, so it was like a show. I hated that. Of course, she would pick the students that didn't reply back to her provocation, the low-profile type, and of course she would use the perfect excuse just after being mean. "Oh, it's just a joke, hi. Once that guy that never searched trouble to anyone was her victim of the day. She takes him as an example to describe a homeless guy on a picture. After only 10 fucking long minutes he stands up and leaves the classroom crying. And when she stops him before he leaves, he tells her his dad died the previous night and push her away. Once the door closed behind him, she paused for a second and take a crying voice to repeat what he had just said. My dad just died, cry, poor baby. Before I realized it, she received my Spanish book in the face, and I called her a ugly slut. Yeah, my insult level isn't great in Spanish. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.